Happy Sabbath, church. It's really an honor for me to be here and see this beautiful diversity that it's very unique in North America, so I'm very, very grateful. Today I want to invite you to a journey with me. We're going to go through the Bible to those very stories you heard a million times, but I promise that today you're going to see something new. So we're going to be looking at the children of the East and what is the mission. And we're going to be sitting at a table with Abraham. I don't know you, but I have never heard a sermon that is rooted in this particular verse. And these are the words of Jesus. It's found in Matthew 8:11. And the Lord, looking into the future, where are we going? This is what he said. I saw that many will come from the east and the west, and they will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Let me put it in my words. Right now, we are looking at the news, and it doesn't seem very feasible that there will be peace. But Jesus, who is on the other side of history, is looking backwards, and he says, this is not how history ends. The end of history is that we are going to be sitting in the kingdom of heaven in this very large table. And Abraham and Isaac and Jacob will be at the head of the table. And the people from the east and the people from the west will come, and we are going to have a meal together. So the question is, okay, I hope that we will be the ones coming from the west, but who are these people of the east that will be sitting at the table with Abraham? And how do we connect with them if we are going to be sharing this special moment? And I want to take you to Isaiah 60, verse number 3, to identify who are these people of the East that the Lord is talking about. And he says, nation will come to your light and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Herds of camels will cover your land, young camels, and look at these names, okay? People coming from Midian, Ephah, they will come from Sheba. And what are they bringing? They are bringing gold and incense, and they're proclaiming the praises of God. And also these people coming from the east, from Kedor's flock, that will be gathered to you, and Nebaioth will serve you, and they will be accepted as offerings on my altar, and I will adorn my glorious temple. This is God looking into the future, okay? We are peeking into the future, and God is saying, people of the east are coming, and he's giving us names. Do you identify any of these names? Who are these people that are coming from the east? And what is their connection with Abraham and obviously with us? So if you know the story of Abraham, how many sons did Abraham had? A little less. 2. We are familiar with 2 sons of Abraham. Those are the most common names that we know about, right? So what is the name of the first son? Ishmael. The second son? Yeah, but did you know that there was a third wife? Her name was Keturah. How many kids did Abraham have with Keturah? A lot. He had 6 sons, if you can see it in the PowerPoint. So in the Bible, actually, we have 2 lines. We have the lines of the children of Isaac and the Hebrew people, and also we have the line of the children of the East that are made of 2 wives, Hagar and Keturah. Hagar has 6 sons, so altogether Abraham actually had 8 sons at his old age. And from Hagar, from Ishmael, he had 12, Ishmael had 12 sons, just like from the other side, Isaac and Jacob, they have 12 sons and 10 tribes. So let's dig a little bit in the family, and you're going to be surprised at the beautiful picture that we are going to see of the mercy of God. So you're familiar with the story of Hagar. Hagar actually means immigrant. That's the meaning of her name. And when Hagar is pregnant, the Lord, first time in history, the Lord names this child, and he calls him Ismael, which means God hears. And Ellen G. White says that it was supposed to be a perpetual reminder that God hears those who call upon his name. And so from Ishmael, look at the names of his children. Remember I told you he had 12 sons? Nebaioth, Remember Isaiah 60? Kedar, Abdil, Mibsan, Mishma, Duma, Masa, Hadad, Tema, Jepur, Napish, and Kedema. Not easy names to name our kids. And these 12 sons of Ishmael became 12 princes according to Genesis 25 and 12 tribal leaders. Okay, let's look at now the story of Keturah. Let's just take the spotlight and put it on her. We don't know anything about Keturah. The only thing we know is that her name means incense, and so some believe that actually she came all the way from Yemen. Only on the other side of history we will know the truth about her. But she had 6 sons. Look at the names of these sons and see if you recognize at least one. Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian. Have you heard about the Midianites? Okay, there you go. This is family. Ishbak and Shua. And look what it says, that what happened to these 6 sons of Abraham. While he was still living, Abraham, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away from his son Isaac to the land of the east. So it means that the first one to went to the land of the east was Ishmael, and then after Sarah died, he married again. He called his 6 sons and he sends them to the land of the east. This is why the Bible calls this whole group of the 7 sons of Abraham the children of the east. Okay? So let's go back to Isaiah 69. Remember that we saw 5 names? Who are these people coming from the east that are going to be at the table with Abraham and they're going to be worshiping with God? These are Midian, which is the 4th son by Keturah. Ephah, which is Midian's first son. It means the grandson of Abraham. So God is saying that not just the sons of Abraham will be at the table, but the grandsons of Abraham will be at the table. Sheba is the first son of Jokshan by Abraham's second son by Keturah. That's a little confusing. I think I wrote it wrong. Kedar is Ishmael's second son, and Nebaioth is the oldest son of Ishmael. By the way, this line, the children of the east, are mentioned in the sacred scriptures of the Muslims called the Quran, and here there is one verse that talks about it. Praise be to God, Allah in Arabic, who has granted me in the old age Ishmael and Isaac. Indeed, my Lord is the hearer of supplication. So let's wrap this up. I'm going to show you different pictures today of table brothers, and this is the first picture. We see that the day is coming in the future where the family of Abraham will be reunited. We are going to be eating together, and we're going to be worshiping God together. And the children of the east will bring different offerings that the offerings we bring, but God will accept them all in his temple. So the question is, great, so what? Why do I need to know about all these people and about all their names? Well, first of all, because God is already showing us that the family of Abraham will be reconciled. Doesn't matter what you see right now on TV or what's going on in the Middle East. God has the last word, and he's telling me, don't be afraid, my family will be reconciled. My children from the east and the west will be eating together. Also, if we're supposed to be eating together in the future, why not to start right now? The place of hospitality is right here. We don't need to wait to go to heaven to start eating together. God already brought neighbors into our circles of influence so that we will share meals together and life together. And finally, we learned that the children of the East are wanting to come to our houses of prayer. Why not to make our houses of prayer available to the children of the East? If that's the future, that's where we will end up worshiping together. Now, I'm going to take you to another story that is very misunderstood. And it's the story of Ishmael. I don't know what you grew up with, but most of us have a negative view of Ishmael. Like, he said sort of a reject. And even some people have this idea that he was even cursed. Now, we're going to go back to the Bible and let the Bible speak and see what the Lord has to say about the son of Ishmael. Now, why is Ishmael so important? Because the spiritual father of the Muslim people is Ishmael. So, here it is, the angel of the Lord told Hagar, Go back to your mistress and submit to her, meaning Sarah. You remember the story. I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but there is tension in the house of Abraham because there are two wives, or a wife and a second wife, a concubine, that are fighting for one spot in the heart of Abraham. And Sarah feels betrayed because she has given her husband, this second woman, to have a child, and now there is tension between the women. So Sarah oppresses Hagar. Hagar runs away, and you can say, great, let her go. Let her go back to her country. Let her go back to Egypt with her family so that God can have a space for Ishmael and for Isaac to be born. But the angel of the Lord goes and finds her in the desert and says, you don't belong here, go back. And look what he says. The angel of the Lord told her, Hagar, go back and submit to your mistress, so show respect to Sarah. And the angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. Who did receive this kind of promise before? Hagar, but before Hagar, who did God tell a similar promise? That your descendants are going to be so many? Abraham. And now God is telling this to Hagar. And he's telling them your descendants are be so much that they will be too numerous to count. I'm going to bless you. This is a picture of blessing. And the angel of the Lord said, you are pregnant. You will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael. For the Lord has heard of your misery. First time in history that a person is named. I hear you. I find it very interesting that if there is something that is core to the Muslim faith, is the sounds. The recitation, sounds, God hears. And this idea that God hears through the sounds is very, very important. And here the Lord is saying, I hear. When you call on me, I hear, and I heard your misery. Now, here we have the picture that becomes a little confusing unless we enter into the actual context of the story. And so the Lord is telling her, Hagar, go back. You don't belong here, go back. But the angel is not saying, go back empty-handed. He's giving her promises. I'm going to bless this child, I'm going to name this child, and I'm going to reverse the status that you're experiencing right now. What is this supposed to mean? Let's look what the Bible says. And it says, he will be a wild donkey of a man. Moms, who will be impressed here and the angel tell you that your son will be a wild donkey? What does it mean? If you go to Job 39:5, you will understand. It's a very common thing during the Old Testament times. You see that in Jacob. He's dying, he calls his children, and he gives them attributes of animals to each of them to bring out some trait of character. So what is the trait of character of a wild donkey? Well, in Genesis 39:5, it says that who has untied the ropes of the wild donkey, that he roams freely in the desert. This is a picture of a nomadic life. Say, Hagar, you are a slave. You have to submit. Your son will be free. He will be the owner of the desert. He will have a nomadic life. He's not going to be a slave like you are. This is why Hagar, when he finishes listening to the angel, she worships God. If that would have been bad news, it would be really strange that she will have worshipped the Lord. The second is his hands will be against everyone, and everyone's hands will be against him. Some Bibles translate this, he will be in hostility with his brother. But in reality, this is a different expression, a difficult expression to translate, because it has this picture. One hand against the other hand. Now, I can have my hand against your hand in cooperation, or I can have my hand against you in fight. And we will see that throughout history, this and this had been the mode that the children of the East and the children of the West have related to. And I will show you what made the difference. And finally, he said he will live to the east of his brothers, on the presence of his brothers. And you go like, Lord, what are you telling this to Hagar? Because one day her son is going to be expelled from home, And the Lord, before the child is born, is telling him, don't worry, your son will be at the east of his brothers. He will be in the presence of his brother. I have an inheritance for him. He's not going to be with his brother in his home, so that when you get kicked out, you never think that it was Sarah who kicked you out. I have a plan for you. Before the child is born, already the Lord is telling Hagar what's the future. And you know what Hagar did? She bows down and she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. Hagar is Egyptian. The Egyptian gods are gods that you see. The gods of the Hebrew are gods that you hear. And she worships, you are the God that I see, as an Egyptian woman. So let's move. What kind of picture do we have based on Genesis 17? Is this a cursed child or is this a blessed child? It's blessed. And when we look at the family of Abraham, this is the way that we need to look at them. This is people that God wanted to bless. This is not cursed people. This is people that God wanted to bless. All along in the heart of God, there is a longing for blessing the family of Abraham. I'm going to take you to one more picture from the life of Ishmael before we move to the next stories. Now we see that the angel said to Hagar, now she goes back home. I feel sorry for Sarah. Can you imagine being Sarah and hear that the Lord has appeared and said, hey, I've seen your mystery and that somebody's been oppressing to you? Anyway, the time passes. Ishmael must be by now around 16 years old when this picture, the second picture happens. And the angel said to Hagar, after she's kicked out in the desert with her son, and Isaac is 3 years old, she's running in the desert. She's desperate. She says, I don't want to see my child die. And she withdraws herself under a tree. Can you imagine the horrorousness of that moment? A mother watching her son to die. And so now the angel comes again. This angel comes to Hagar, and he says, get to your feet. Lift up the child and hold him in your arms, because I will make him a great nation. A great nation. Greatness by God's definition. Then God opened her eyes and she saw a well full of water. She went to it, filled her water skin, and gave to the child to drink. And then he finishes. Was Ishmael alone in the desert, forgotten by God? No. God was with the child, and he grew up and lived in the wilderness of Paran. Interesting that this is a story that is very, very dear to the heart of Muslim people. When they go on pilgrimage, you know what they do? They go back to Mecca. They believe that Mecca is the place where God took Abraham and Ishmael and Hagar. Now, historically, it doesn't add up for us. I'm just now telling you the Islamic version is that they go back there and they reenact the story of Hagar running from one Safa to Marwa, that are two hills, looking for water 7 times. When Muslims go on pilgrimage, what they are doing, they are reenacting this particular story. And how beautiful is when we can show them that God had a plan for the child, and God was with the child according to the story. So God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert. He was a wild donkey, just like the angel was said, and he became an archer. Is this a picture of blessing or a picture of curse? And finally, when Abraham died, who comes to bury the father? Both brothers. In Genesis 25, we read that. So what? What's the conclusion of this story? When the Lord comes and tells Abraham, I'm going to give you a son, he says, I don't need a son, I already have a son. And the Lord is like, no, I'm going to give you a son. This will be a son of the covenant. You know what Abraham did in that very second? It's right there in Genesis 17. Be a good Berean and go back to the scriptures and read it. He bowed down, he prostrated to the ground, and this was his prayer: "Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee." This is my prayer for the descendants of Abraham from the line of Ishmael and the Muslim people. Lord, I want to pray like my father Abraham, that the children of the East might always live before your presence. If God bless Ishmael, should we curse him? What is our identity? It's be a people of blessing. You can never go wrong. People ask me, how do you relate with Muslims? They are so different. You know what? I'm not afraid of Muslims because I have one agenda. One agenda: to bless them. I go to every home and I'm thinking, how can I bless this family? What can I say that will be a blessing to them? And when you walk with a heart full of blessing, you know what happens? You never once get rejected. In 26 years that I have been minister with Muslims, I had prayed in the weirdest places, in their home, in the trains, in the stations, underground. I mean, you name it. Only one time, 3 years ago, a Somali man told me, "No, thank you, don't pray for me." In 26 years, I have never encountered, except this one time, anybody that says, "Don't pray for me." Why? Because I come with one agenda. How can I be a blessing to this family? And you can take this anywhere, and you can always be guaranteed you have nothing to fear. Blessing takes away everything that might be a barrier between us. Who else are these stable brothers from the East that God wants us to see? Today what we are doing is we are opening the family album and looking at the pictures of, okay, this is Uncle Tom, but we don't know anything about Uncle Tom. And so I'm going to show you that actually there is a reason why this picture is in the album. And there is a story that is attached to that Uncle Tom. And it's a beautiful story of God's design for the nations. If you think here that you are here just because you came to America, you're wrong. You're here because God brought you with a very sacred and strategic purpose. Because we represent the nations of earth, that we are going to reach out to the other unreached people groups that are in our neighborhood here. And we better understand what God is doing so that we can just imitate God. So here is the other table brother. I'm not going to read the verses. His name is Job. You know what the Bible says? He was the greatest man of all the people of the East. He was part of this group of the East. We have another story. You are more familiar with this. It's the story of Joseph. Joseph is about to be sold into Egypt, into slavery, and he's about to be killed. And then somebody realizes, one of the brothers says, wait a minute, our cousins are coming by. And he calls them first the Midianites, later called the Ishmaelites. And people said, oh, you see, the Bible has errors. And the Bible is perfect. You know why they call it Ishmaelites or Midianites? Because these people intermarried. They were cousins. They are all part of the children of the East. So they are Midianites or Ishmaelites, and God used them to save Joseph. Later on, we see something even more beautiful. When the Lord tells the people how they're going to worship him in the temple, in the sanctuary, he tells them, don't bring your offerings unless you bring spices and oil and incense for the sanctuary. And they are to make them according to the way God commanded them. But they don't have spices in the desert. They depend on the children of the East that will come, because the children of the East have caravans, and they come and they bring the spices and sell it. And I believe that God, in his beautiful purpose, is bringing the children of the East all the way to the door of the sanctuary to trade with their cousins so that they can learn about the sanctuary of God. Why do you guys buy so much oil? Why all this myrrh? What is this incense? Oh, this is how we worship our God. And that way, God kept them through business connected. Today, many of you are doing business with Muslim people. You think it's just because it happened? No, God is bringing these people, is connecting them through business for a sacred purpose, that you will get to know that person and you will get to connect with them and help them see that there is a bigger purpose behind them. Jethro, this is a very amazing story. Jethro is a priest of the Most High God in the desert. Is there a sanctuary in the desert? How can he be a priest of the Most High God in the desert? This is not a fake God. And who is Jethro? He's a Midianite. He became the father-in-law of Moses because, remember, he gave his daughter Zipporah to him. And he's called a prince of Midian. Remember, we saw that Midian was one of the sons of Keturah. And his title, his nickname was Reuel, the friend of God. So God has his children in Egypt, Moses and his people, but also he has in the desert a priest of the Most High God that is waiting them, who is a friend of God. And how do we know that Jethro is worshiping the God of Abraham? Because look what happened. When Moses comes out and tells Jethro what's happened, Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord who has delivered you out of the hands of the Egyptians." And then later, Moses' father-in-law, he took a burnt offering and he sacrificed it to God. How does he know how to sacrifice? The way of the family of God. You can see how God had his people here, but he's also been preparing some in the desert. And at some point, these people connect. Finally, Jethro was very important because when Moses was overwhelmed with all these people coming all day pouring with problems, it was Jethro who said, no, this is not going to work. You have to divide them into groups of 550, and once you get organized, that will be. And Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. This is the people of the East coordinating or cooperating with the line of Isaac. I have two more table brothers. This will be a sister. Her name, we don't know it, but we do know that she was the queen of Sheba. And the Bible tells us that she came looking for wisdom. And the tradition said that actually she came from Yemen, from underneath what is Saudi Arabia today. And it says that Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East. Till this day, I've been blessed to have a lot of interaction with Arab people. The one thing that you can never go wrong with is wisdom. They love wisdom literature. They love the Book of Solomon. They love anything that has to do with wisdom. And the Queen of Sheba came looking for wisdom because she heard that she had a lot of wisdom, but there was a superior wisdom in the house of God. It's a value that we can see still till this day. And the final table brother I want to share with this morning is the story of the Magi. We don't know how many were there. We say that there are 3. You know why? Because there were 3 gifts. And we don't know how many people were there. The one thing that we know is that if you go to Desire of Ages, it's absolutely incredible what you'll find there. Who are these Magi that came to Jesus to worship him? They didn't come to see, this baby's born. No, they came to worship him. These are the first people who are worshiping Jesus in the history. It's these people that came from the East. Who are these people? Ellen G. White said, the light of God is ever shining amid the darkness of heathenism. As these Magi studied the heavens and they thought to fathom the mysteries behind the bright path, they beheld the glory of the Creator. So these are people who are looking for God already, are looking for God in nature. Seeking clearer knowledge, they turn to the Hebrew Scriptures. In their own lands were treasured poetic writings that predicted the coming of a divine teacher. Let me tell you, in every people group on earth, God has left footprints. Every people group has already some footprint that is pointing to Jesus. I was one time talking to a group of Muslim sisters in Azerbaijan, and one of the women told me, we have a tradition. And I shared this last night, I believe. The tradition is that between hell and heaven, there is a bridge that is as thick as the hair. So there's no way you can cross it. But there is a white lamb from heaven that God has provided that is perfectly impure, that if you trust the lamb and you sit on the lamb, he can get you across. In every people group, no matter how lost they are, God has left his footprints. And if you search, you will find it. And the Magi find the footprints, but they realize this is not enough, and they had to go to the Bible. So what? What is this supposed to mean? God has his people in the land of the East. When Israel was in a spiritual revival, the children of the East came and they cooperated with the children of Israel. When Israel was in apostasy, the children of Ishmael and the line of the East came and fought with the line of Isaac. At a time of revival, we see that Solomon opened the door for the children of the East. So did David, and so forth. But when they are in apostasy, they are fighting. What is our relationship today with the children of the East? And could that be telling us about the state of the church? Are we at peace? Are we at war? Are we afraid? Or are we so convinced that we are so overflowing with blessing that we want to go and share it around? What about the mission of God? Okay, we see all these interesting connections, but where do the people of the East fit in the mission of God? Okay, let's ask the Bible. Who was the very first person to be circumcised after Abraham? Well, Isaac wasn't born yet. When the Lord announces that he will be born, there are 13 years. Who was the very first person according to Genesis 17, 24 and 25? Ishmael was the very first person who benefited from the circumcision. It's in the Bible, I'm not making that up. You can read it. Muslim men today circumcise. If you ask them why, well, because Abraham did it. But why did Abraham did it? They have no idea. I think we have something to add to their story so they can understand that this was a sort of a covenant that God wanted to have with them and invite them to benefit from the covenant and the son of the covenant, which is Isaac. Who are the first people that came to worship Jesus? Who are the first people that God, outside of the Jewish people, revealed the birth of Jesus Christ? Exactly. The children of the East, the Magi, were the very first. And when Paul, who was sent to the Gentile nations, was sent by God out with the good news of salvation, who were the very first people that God sent them to? Do you know where did Paul went first? Arabia. How long was he there? 3 years. We don't know what's going on there, but I'll tell you something. Paul was not watching the sand dunes. Because when Paul came back from Arabia, the king of the Nabateans, Aretha, he chased him all the way to Jerusalem to kill him. You don't want to kill somebody unless he's made a beef stirrup in your area. Do you remember the story of the basket and Paul being lowered by this big basket? We love to tell the kids that story. Well, it's actually not a kid's story. It's a very serious story. It's a story of God protecting Paul from the king of the Nabateans, which is today Petra in Jordan, who wanted to kill him. So I'm pretty sure he's preaching the gospel there and stirring up things so that the king feels like his own foundation of his government is stirred up. So what is the summary of what we have seen on the mission of God? First circumcised, sign of the covenant, was Ishmael. First to meet Jesus and worship him, the children of the East. And first agent of God sent to the Gentile world was sent to the children of the East. It's very interesting that God went first to them, but usually we go last. Maybe there is something here for us to think. It's the priority of God that the children of the East will be brought home. Every 4 people walking in this dear planet this morning, 1 person, it's a Muslim. Let me repeat that again. Every 4 people that are walking here this morning, 1 person is a Muslim. We will not be going home until they hear and have the opportunity to accept or reject. And that's why we are here, and that's God telling us, you can't go to Afghanistan. I made it so easy. I brought Afghanistan to your neighborhood. You cannot go to Somalia. I brought the Somali people right here. We saw that last night, so I'm not going to repeat that. I want to, what is Islamic connections? Like, okay, yes, the children of the East. Well, Muhammad, the spiritual father of Muslims, was actually a descendant of Ishmael. And Muslims see the story of Ishmael and Hagar as their spiritual mother and father. I'm telling you, I share this story with Muslims because they don't have it in their holy book. And they cry when I said, then you know, all along my God had a big place in his heart for your people, and he blessed them. And if your people are lost, they can come back because my God had already made a place for them at a table. And I show them the verse of Matthew 8:11. What kind of response do you think I get? Do you think anybody will get offended? They're amazed. How come Christians never talk to us about these things? Because we are too busy to be looking at them through political lenses. That's our biggest problem. And we need to recover our missional lenses. Because if we keep looking at the world with our political lenses, we'll keep going where we are going, which is not a good place. So this morning, I want to, I have a few more slides, but I'm going to skip it. If anybody's interested in this PowerPoint, I'll be happy to share it with you. How can this story guide us in our relationship with Muslims today? Anybody would like to share? To love first. Can't go wrong loving. And that love is manifested as a blessing. Anyone else would like to share? What can we learn from this story? Does it make you feel a bit uncomfortable? Amen. Amen. This afternoon, we are going to put hands and feet to this. How can you do it? Now that you understand this is where God is taking us, the question is, how do I do this? Come this afternoon. We will be, after the padlock, talking about specifically what can we do to bring these Muslim people to our tables. Because the table is a place of healing. The word hospital and hospitality have the same root. You know why? Because the way God designed the table is as a place of healing. And I don't mean just having, like sometimes I go to churches and I see the potluck, people just grab food and they leave. That's not what I mean. Through hospitality, and if you want to see it, you have to go to the Middle East or to Asia. Through hospitality is when you want to make your guests feel that blessing of God. And you actually listen and ask questions and engage with them. And the table becomes a place where you start recognizing what are their needs. And you are able to actually minister what it hurts, not what you think they need. There is a big difference between ministering and a project. In a project, you have a task, you go, you fulfill it. In a ministry, you're actually ministering what? The divine blessing. You become the channel and you pour things out. That's the future. Now it's up to you. Are you going to believe this? That we are at the table with Abraham, that's our destiny, and we've been called to start right here, right now? We're going to continue to believe the voices out there that is dividing us, that are breaking us down, that is causing us to fear. And that's the choice I leave before you this morning. And I hope that if anybody felt called this morning to say, you know what, I have never looked at my neighbors that way, but today, by God's grace, I'm open. I wait for you this afternoon. Let's talk about it. We'll help you. It's different, but it's not difficult. God bless you.